morning, everyone. Welcome to the Gloucester Unitarian Universalist Church. Our congregation was first gathered in 1779 by a small group of courageous people dedicated to their belief in a radical, saving message of a God who loved everyone. We are enjoying being back together again in our 1806 sanctuary, and we're so glad that you can all be here with us this morning. You are all welcome here, regardless of your heritage, your age, your income, your abilities, or your religious beliefs. As a welcoming congregation, we affirm the full inclusion of people of all sexual orientations and gender expressions. I'd especially like to welcome any visitors with us this morning. If you're visiting and you'd like to become better acquainted, I invite you to either sign the guest book back in the vestibule or to fill out one of the yellow cards on the backs of the pews, and you can just drop that into the collection plate. We'd be happy to be in touch. If folks want to get together with me for coffee or to take a walk or something, it's a little crazy this time right now, figuring out what we can do, but I'm happy to try to get together. We'd also like to issue a warm welcome to all of our folks who are watching on YouTube this morning. Happy to have you with us, and we look forward to the day when you can maybe join us in person. I think now I just will turn it over to Holly Tangway, who has some announcements.
My first announcement is that my thought that the script would just automatically appear on the lectern over there was mistaken. So I didn't print it out, so I'm sharing Reverend Janet's tablet. The first announcement I want to make is that you will find in your order of service, and if you're joining us from home, you can find it in the Friday email. There's a form for ordering poinsettias for the Christmas Eve and Christmas celebrations. The front of the church looks beautiful here with an array of red and white poinsettias. All right. Our service is being live streamed this morning. We have switched from Zoom to live streaming on our own YouTube channel. For anyone watching from home, we invite you to have a candle or chalice and matches ready, so that when we light the chalice to begin our service, we can join together in spirit. Just a quick reminder that masks are required at all times during the service, including while singing our closing hymn. Flowers are very welcome each week. If you are interested in donating flowers, please contact Christine in the church office. Now that the cold weather has arrived, it will be getting chilly in here as we continue to provide fresh air during our service. There are some hand-knitted shawls at the back of the sanctuary if you want to borrow one to wrap up in. Reverend Janet is conducting a spiritual practices group for Advent. We will have a gathering on Zoom on 2 more Thursday afternoons at 5 to learn the ancient practice of Lectio Divina, or sacred reading. Each week, the group will study a reading and explore it in depth through reading closely, meditation, and contemplation. This won't be a drop-in group, so please let Reverend Janet know in advance if you want to join. You can come once or to the 2 remaining, but you need to sign up in advance. Here are a couple of upcoming holiday activities. Anyone who wants to will meet here in the sanctuary this coming Friday, December 10th, at 10:30 to help decorate the sanctuary. It feels so special to be celebrating in our sanctuary this Christmas. The membership team hopes you can join us. Then, the next day, Saturday, December 11th, the Middle Street Walk is happening, and we'll have the church open for tours and free hot drinks in the entry house. We'd love to have you come by to say hello and could use a few folks to help greet visitors. Contact me for more information. And now, let us deepen our hearts and our spirits for worship.
Consider the cosmos, an eternal dance of mass, energy, and spirit. Consider the stars, how gracefully they wheel through space in perfect rhythm, year by celestial year. Even obscured by clouds, still they dance, their patterns seen or unseen, engraved in us. Consider the planets, how they spin and sweep always in the same way, never missing a beat, their pattern perfect around the mother star. The intimacy of their dance stored in cosmic knowledge beyond our comprehension. Consider Earth, which dances and is danced upon. Faultless is the rhythm of the seasons, majestic the pivoting which centers the global dance. Behold the variety of movement, spontaneity in the midst of regularity, predictable yet full of surprise. Consider people and the dance of life, the initial impulsive movement, the naive grace that succeeds it, the deliberate grace of age, the final rest of death. We are partners in a cosmic dance. Let our dancing be for joy. Come, let us worship together. This morning, as Holly lights our chalice, I'll share the words of the Reverend Gordon McKeeman. Deep calls unto deep. Joy calls unto joy. Light calls unto light. Let the kindling of this flame rekindle in us the inner light of love, of peace, and of hope. And as one flame lights another, nor grows the less, we pledge ourselves to be bearers of the light wherever we are. I invite us now to take a moment to affirm the covenant that we share with one another. The words are found in your order of service, or if you're watching from home, we're in the weekly email. In the light of truth and the warmth of love, we gather to seek, to sustain, and to share. Life is a gift for which we are grateful. We gather in community, the glories and the mysteries of this great gift. This morning marks the second Sunday in the season of Advent. It's the beginning of the liturgical year, and it is a time when the transforming power of love or God is awaited with hope and expectation to come into the world. Each week until Christmas, we light a new candle on the Advent wreath. The circle of greenery on the wreath reminds us of the eternal cycle of all life, without beginning or end. And the candles remind us that we are each called to shine our light amid the pain and the suffering facing our world. The light of Advent grows brighter and brighter, guiding us toward personal peace, shared joy, and more love. This morning, we light our second candle. We light this candle as a symbol of our longing for peace. Our caring community aspires to be peacemakers, to be a source of freedom from violence and exclusion. Together, may we strive to create a lasting peace. As I said to Holly this morning, today's the day where she gets to burn the place down. So today we are also going to observe the festival of Chanukah. This is the 8-day period when Jewish people commemorate the reclaiming of their temple from the Greeks in the 2nd century before Common Era. The Jews lit the menorah using a tiny amount of purified oil, all that they had remaining. And Chanukah commemorates the miracle of this oil, which burned brightly for 8 days until more could be obtained and purified for use in the temple. And so today, we will light all the candles except for tonight's and tomorrow night's. Thank you. And Holly? Okay.
The responsive reading is For Joy by Jan Richardson. It's printed in your order of service. Please read the italicized portions. You can prepare, but still it will come to you by surprise. It will astonish you how wide your heart will open in welcome.
For the joy that finds you so ready and still so unprepared.
I invite us now into a time of spoken prayer to be followed by silent meditation. Spirit of life and love, known by many names, but by no name fully known. We gather here this morning, asking for patience in this time of waiting and of expectation. We wait for the earth to turn again toward the sun. We wait for the inbreaking, the arrival of the holy in our midst. And we wait for an end to the illness and fear that are limiting and endangering our lives. We watch as so much that we care about seems to be in danger. Our ability to show compassion and care for one another, our form of government, and the health of our planet. We ask for help in remembering that even though we wait for the return of the light, the darkness has great beauty and depth and safety. We remember that we begin life in darkness, growing in the safety and depth of another's body before we come forth into the light. We remember in this dormant time that seeds must lie buried in the depth of the earth before they can turn toward the light and fulfill their destiny. Remind us of the beauty and mystery we can only experience in the dark. In the daylight, the moon and the stars are obscured from our view. If it were light all the time, there is so much that we would never see. We hold in our hearts all of those in our community or in our families who have need of our prayers this morning. All those who are sick, those who are isolated. May they and we know comfort and well-being. Amen.
Our reading today is titled Open to Joy by Elia Kemler. Years ago, at just this time of year, my mother got lost in the North Shore shopping mall. The department store where she got lost had gorgeous vaulted ceilings with huge skylights. My mother said the night sky was so beautiful she kept looking up instead of in the direction her two friends had gone. This was before the time of cell phones, so her friends, unable to find her and worried she had passed out or been abducted, had her paged over the mall loudspeaker. She was rescued by the mall security guards, and all was well. My younger brother and sisters were mortified, but I loved this story, and still do. I loved that the winter sky through the ceiling of a department store was so full of wonder to my mother that she got lost in it. In the church that I serve, we light the Advent wreath candles to help us remember we are in a time of waiting for hope to get itself born into this world. On the third Sunday, we light the candle for joy. It often feels like bad timing. Holiday stress levels have risen by then, along with that particular ache many of us feel at this season, a mixture of longing and loneliness, kind of like homesickness, but for a place we have never been. This year, of course, it is hard to forget we are waiting. We are waiting for an end to sickness and isolation, waiting for justice, waiting for these days of strangeness and sorrow to be over. How do we even think about joy? The old stories we retell at this time of year have clues. They tell us something important about the nature of joy, that joy can break through like starlight or candlelight in the darkness, but that it is surrounded by the hard stuff of everyday life. Maybe that makes it all the more precious. The stories remind us there is still and always joy in this world, and it is for everyone. But it usually comes right alongside the struggle. Mary and Joseph make a long, tired journey to Bethlehem before the joy of the baby's birth. The Maccabees live in the hills, fighting desperate battles and impossible odds before winning back their city and the oil in the temple lamp burning for 8 days. Winter solstice arrives in the midst of the deepest darkness. The joy comes alongside the waiting. It comes alongside the pain and fear and uncertainty, and has nothing to do with ideal circumstances. Maybe all we can do is issue joy an open invitation, and then start paying attention to how and where it shows up. We may discover that joy is already happening, smaller and quieter and braver than we realized. We may find joy is in the taste of an orange, the smell of coffee, the view of the night sky, the sound of the violin. This is a difficult season in a difficult year. Let joy find you, however and wherever you are.
We gather here in this sacred and beautiful space this morning, grateful to all those who came before us, who made this church possible through their generosity and their commitment and their vision. We give to carry our church forward into the future and to support all of the work that we do in the wider world as well. Our offering this morning will now be gratefully received. Blessings upon the givers and upon your gifts. One sunny day years ago, during my junior semester in Paris, I dropped into Notre Dame Cathedral, as I did every chance I got. It's possible that it was the first time I had ever been inside when the sun was shining, Paris winters being what they are. But I have this intense memory of standing in the transept as light poured through the famous South Rose window. And suddenly, bright spots of color were reflected all over the ancient stone floors, right at my feet. It was a transcendent moment, blues, greens, reds just shimmering there on the floor. And it was one of those times when you feel yourself transported for just a second. And looking back, I can only describe it as a moment of joy. This memory came up for me recently as I've been contemplating the nature of joy. It's a time of year when we hear the word joy used a lot. We see and hear a lot about joy this season, along with peace and hope. All those spiritual virtues that can be really challenging to feel and that are really elusive. Like the colors on the cathedral floor. These are emotions we experience. And just as suddenly as a cloud passes over the sun, they are gone. Our theme for the month of December is opening to joy. And here at the end of 2021, in the 21st month of the COVID-19 pandemic, thinking about joy can feel like a very challenging exercise. It's entirely possible as we lurch through our days, watching the rise and fall of COVID case numbers, coping with rising prices and falling inventory, and feeling the lack of companionship and daylight and sunshine, that this is a particularly joyless time. And we might even wonder, why are we talking about this right now? Why aren't you dancing with joy at this very moment? Is the only relevant spiritual question, according to the late Sufi master, Pir Vilayat Khan. Excuse me. I'm sure each and every one of us can think of a list of reasons why we aren't dancing with joy this morning. And for that reason, it is wise to talk about it, to see if we can grasp a sense of joy, that elusive, quicksilvery sensation. Joy is one word we use to share and express our positive emotions. Others include happiness and pleasure. But joy stands apart from the other two. For starters, it is more memorable, it's more intense. It can suddenly be present without an obvious cause, such as a great meal or a fun time with friends and family. Those are much more obvious. Events such as those give us pleasure. They make us happy. We might feel warm and content, satisfied, relaxed. Joy, in contrast, breaks in, often when we are least expecting it. There is a sharpness to joy, kind of an edge. There's a sense of suddenness. And then it can be gone just as quickly. I invite you to think back this morning to times when you might have experienced an abrupt inbreaking of joy, a sensation out of nowhere. And I bet you'll be able to conjure up the sensation in your body as you do that. One summer morning when I was around 9 or 10, I was out running errands with my dad. And it was during one of those spells, often happens in August, when the weather just suddenly turns cool and dry for a few days, and it really feels like a blessing. And it was cool enough that I had borrowed my mom's suede jacket. And I remember on that very ordinary Saturday morning doing mundane things, feeling this sensation of bubbling over, feeling joyful. And I just wonder if you can remember moments like that in your lives. The Christian author C.S. Lewis titled his spiritual memoir, Surprised by Joy. He took his title from a poem by William Wordsworth that begins, "Surprised by joy, impatient as the wind, I turned to share the transport." And just think for a moment about the words that Wordsworth used. Surprised, transport. Joy broke in on him and moved him. C.S. Lewis wrote this, "Joy must be sharply distinguished both from happiness and pleasure. Joy, in my sense," he says, "has indeed one characteristic and only one in common with them, the fact that anyone who has experienced it will want it again. I doubt whether anyone who has tasted joy would ever, if both were in his power, exchange it for all the pleasures in the world. But then, joy is never in our power, and pleasure often is." Joy is never in our power, and pleasure often is. Joy is different than pleasure or happiness in that it is seen as a spiritual goal. Why aren't you dancing with joy at this very moment? The mystics, the great spiritual leaders throughout human history, have guided us toward joy. Here's a brief sampling. Julian of Norwich, the English mystic and anchoress of the 14th century, proclaimed that the fullness of joy is to behold God in everything. And the Hasidic teacher, the Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, said, "Always remember, joy is not incidental to your spiritual quest. It is vital." Oh, I've been using the word spiritual a lot. The spiritual nature of joy, unlike pleasure, is woven through religious writings as theologians affirm and reaffirm the importance of joy as part of a spiritual life. Julian of Norwich lived in a cell attached to the wall of a cathedral. I doubt she experienced much pleasure, but she wrote about joy. And so joy becomes a word to be used year-round, a critical part of our spirituality, part of our growth and transformation in reaching our human potential. So this leads to the question of what is spirituality? And that is truly a loaded question and can have many different answers. I'm sure that many of you have your own definitions. When asked, I sometimes say that spirituality is our opening to that which is larger than ourselves, that connects us to all of life, and also that opens us to what lies deep within us. Not content with an explanation such as that, some years back, a Harvard academic named George Velland attempted to better define spirituality. In his book, Spiritual Evolution, Velland, a Harvard professor and for 30 years the director of the study of adult development, breaks down spirituality even further. He defines spirituality as the positive emotions we experience. Here's a list: love, awe, gratitude, forgiveness, compassion, faith, hope, and joy. These positive emotions are spiritual in nature because they lead us to connect, to be more aware, and to be more loving. He notes that negative emotions, such as fear and hatred and anger, cause us to withdraw, to narrow our thinking, to reject connection. Joy, then, is a component of spirituality, a designation that is not extended to pleasure or happiness. It transcends pleasure. C.S. Lewis commented in a letter that 1 second of joy is worth 12 hours of pleasure. Joy can find us, like sunshine suddenly breaking through clouds. But we need to make room for it in our lives, need to find ways to enable the joy to break in. And given the many burdens and the difficulties and the long nights that we are encountering just now, are there ways to make room for joy? How do we open ourselves to it? We begin with mindfulness. We begin by paying attention, to look for the holy in everything around us. Joy is born out of gratitude, born out of a choice to look hard each day for what is right with the world. Joy is born out of love and appreciation for beauty. We will never be grateful for love and for the beauty of this earth and of each other if we do not notice. Joy begins with paying attention. Once we begin paying attention, we begin to notice all the things, large and small, for which we can be grateful. The slanting beams of the sun breaking through clouds just at sunset. Stars shining through the bare branches of the trees that we can't see as well in the summer. The lighthearted beauty of children running and dancing and singing around us. We can be grateful for science, for vaccines. We begin to practice gratitude by being mindful of all that we have, all of the goodness and the beauty that we can see if we are paying attention. We can ask ourselves every day to name a few things we are grateful for. You will find them, and more, if you are observing the life around you and taking note. And then you will have begun to open yourself to a life of spirit in which you find yourself connected, present, loved, and grateful. You will have opened yourself to the possibility of joy breaking in, breaking through like the sun. Think of seeking joy as a choice, as deliberate, an orientation toward life. Think of joy sometimes as an act of defiance in the face of all that might be wrong with the world. C.S. Lewis wrote, "Joy is never in our power." I'm not so sure. We can't buy it, perhaps, or arrange it to be delivered by Amazon. But we can hold joy as an ideal, a goal that we can work towards by finding ways to open ourselves to the possibility of it. If we lead a life emphasizing the positive spiritual emotions I named earlier, remember, love and gratitude, forgiveness, awe, compassion, faith, and hope, we can grow in faith that joy will be present in our lives. In this quiet season with so many cares and so little light, may all of your dancing be for joy. Blessed be. Amen. And now those of you at home with your candles, I invite you to hold them up and together blow them out as we say the words here to extinguish our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Go in peace and return in love. Amen.